Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us here at Warphammer today. We have an amazing interview coming up with Russell Tassin, one of the best Chaos Space Marine players out there, who recently finished an impressive 5-1 run at the Lone Star Open with his Black Legion list. Listen, before we get started, 2 quick requests from me to you. First, please take a second to like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, it helps with the algorithm, it helps Axel's breath not be as horrible. This is really bad right now. And it helps keep more of this great Chaos content coming to you. And who doesn't love great Chaos content? Corpse worshippers, that's who. And you're better than that. Oh, thanks, Axel. And 2, go ahead and check out Snot Goblin Gaming. They're a really innovative company making this amazing modular train system. That's perfect whether you play competitively or play on your kitchen table with friends. It doesn't require glue, it can be painted to look really nice, it assembles and disassembles very easily, doesn't require a lot of storage space. It's a really innovative solution. I highly recommend you check them out. And we're going to have a link in the description below to review and how you can learn more about that and get involved. Listen, with all that out of the way, nothing left to say besides death to the false emperor. I'll see you on the other side.
Russell, when you got your hands on the new codex, what was kind of the first thing that stood out to you? What were your initial impressions?
The biggest thing that I was looking forward to and I was glad to see was 3-wound models because of how resilient they are. 2-wound models are great, and I know a lot of people are happy about them, but there's so many 2-damage weapons out there that unless you're running play marines, that you might as well have a 1-wound model. So, but the 3-wound models have been absolutely wonderful, and you see my list is built, possessed, chosen, Terminators, and bikes. You know, so I'm loving the 3-wound models, and they're extremely resilient against all the different meta lists that are out there running around.
Yeah, especially because a lot of them, all of the great defensive buffs we can stack on. And that T5 of the bikes. Really, what feels amazing to me, and I don't know if you feel the same way, was I felt last codex we were really pigeonholed into like 1 or 2 list styles. Like every legion, Emperor's Children, you're bringing Deep Strike and Terminators, you're bringing Deep Strike and Noise Marines. You know, Black Legion, you were bringing kind of the Abaddon shooting castle. Now I kind of feel like even Black Legion, for example, just taking 1 legion, you can kind of build it shooty, you can build it more, you know, melee, you can build it aggressive, you can build more defensive lists. Man, it's a great time to be playing Chaos Space Marines.
It absolutely is, and I like to be able to feel like I can actually scrap now and live. CSM have always been great at scrapping, but then dying right afterwards.
Yeah, we're very good at the dying. Yeah.
Now I can jump on an objective, kill a Carnifex, and then take an entire shooting a phase from an entire Tyranid army and still have 7 Terminators standing there, which is amazing.
Yeah. No, I mean it's absolutely fantastic. Just all the different ways we can build, and definitely you're right. I know exactly what you mean. We're actually staying there, we're staying on the battlefield. And people are not ready for that when they see the damage we can take and still keep punching. There was actually a great moment in the game. You were on stream against Sisters. Joe from War Games Live streamed that, did a fantastic job. Where I believe you'd lost 4 Chosen earlier that battle round or earlier in the game. And you had just 6 Chosen come in there. They took that punch with, suffered those 12 wounds, lost 4 guys, and came in and one-shotted Morven Vol after that. That was music to my ears, man.
It was a big moment in the game, and I don't think he thought that was going to happen.
Yeah. No, so I'll be honest, my first impression when I watched was kind of like, it must have gotten lucky with the dice, to one-shot her like that. They kind of did the math later. With those Abaddon buffs, man, those Chosen are heavy hitters. Well, let's go ahead, let's dive into that list, because I think that you made some really interesting choices that I think a lot of people were wanting to know more about. So can you kind of go over your list quickly, starting with, I guess, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Abaddon, the Despoiler.
Abaddon the Despoiler. He's the one, and mine's the one and only Abaddon Despoiler. I got him right here. He's the one that won Warzone Houston. He didn't just come out of the kit.
You got to show it in front of you.
There you go.
There we go, Abaddon.
But that's my guy. I've had so much fun with him in the last few years. I know a lot of people are really jazzed and think he's super powerful. To be honest, he's just as powerful as he was before, at a higher point premium. I mean, the only complaint I could have with the old Abaddon was they were rolling a 1 when I went to fight with Draconian. So that being gone is great. But there's a few other things I miss, like the Fearless Bubble and the extra CP. And I know this is controversial, but I actually like having half wounds more than a wound cap, because it changes the way people play around you. When you half wounds, people will deal with it when they get there. But when you when you have a wound cap per phase, it makes people very creative, and Abaddon will actually die faster than he used to.
Interesting. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's definitely, especially I feel if it was earlier in the edition, that'd be one thing. But at this point, people have seen Necron, get hands for a while and Phoenix Lords, and it's not, blowing people's minds to see a wound cap on a character. Okay, so Abaddon, that makes sense. I'm kind of going down the list. I have it here. This is just a fantastic list. You brought a Demon Prince next, correct? What did you put on that Demon Prince?
So Demon Prince is one that I'm actually really excited about, that I've always been disappointed in. Because every time I attacked with a Demon Prince before, I would always hit like 3 times and fail to wound. But having the ability to take extra warlord traits and relics, which we didn't have in our old codex, outside
that
of,
was so frustrating. Yeah.
Oh, it's so frustrating. Man. But now having Flames of Spite on a Demon Prince, same list of with Abaddon. And then putting Intoxicating Elixir, which I really do like the new Intoxicating Elixir. With the Slaanesh and Fight First, there's just so many things that Demon Prince brings to the table. That's I mean, he's cuts down Necron planes or Harpies, with the breeze. I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so for those that don't remember, Intoxicating Elixir used to be, I think it was +1 strength and attack or something. And now it gives you kind of almost like Abaddon. You have another wound cap. You can activate once per game in the fight phase, which means you can send him into risky situations and he'll still be there. And the best part is it combos so well with that fight first. Like he can get in there, take a punch, and then if they don't fall back from him, he's swinging first next turn. And you've got that Flames of Spite and you've got that sword, and not a lot wants to hang around there with him.
Not a lot will. And then to follow that is the Lord Discordant with the Black Legion Warlord trait that allows him to reroll all wounds.
Yeah.
And get D3 wounds back. Now I will, going forward, switch the 2 relics. I mean the 2 Warlord traits. The Flames of Spite will go over to my Lord Discordant because he has more attack, so I think I'll get more out of the mortal wounds there. Sure. And then I'll put the Warlord trait from Black Legion that lets me reroll all wounds on the Demon Prince. So that actually will be the only real change out the gate. But then the Lord Discordant is absolutely amazing. I have a loud vehicle.
All good.
But the Lord Discordant with the Gorgon of Hate is just amazing because it does interact in a good way with Armor Contempt, because it's adding 1 to your saving throw, and also giving you a 4-up invuln.
Yeah.
And exploding, which the exploding is absolutely wonderful, especially if he does die and there's like a sister standing on the objective next to you. Well, guess what? The sister's dying with him. So I mean,
I hadn't even thought of that. That is so cool.
Yeah, because he has the ability to clear things out so well that when he does die, there's not much around him, and that almost guaranteed explosion is absolutely wonderful. And it's on a 2-up. It's D3 mortal wounds. On a 6-up, a flat 3, but it's definitely enough to hurt those people that just got done scrapping with the disco.
Yeah, exactly. If they somehow survive, no, that makes complete sense. So let's see, the Soul Eater. I think it also has the Warlord kit you're talking about for the reroll wounds. I think there's like a second condition where he like heals when he kills people or something. Yeah.
Every time he kills something, he gets D3 wounds back at the end of that fight.
Oh, that's good.
So like if I kill one model, I'll get D3 wounds back.
Yeah.
So
especially cool with that Intoxicating Elixir, because it'll take the damage and then he takes its max 3 wounds and he's right back there at full health. Basically, that's really spicy.
It is.
Okay.
I'm pretty excited about it.
And then you've got kind of the third choice there is a Master of Possession, which I think is, didn't come as a shock to anyone. Can you kind of talk about how you use the Master of Possession?
The Master of Possession I used a lot for Pact of Flesh and adding +1 toughness or +1 strength, depending on what targets were out there or what guns were out there. In certain cases where I had a tough secondary choice game, I might go with Psychic Interrogation. And usually it was Master of Possession doing it because I really like being able to throw out the Feel No Pain from my Demon Prince onto one of my Slaanesh units. So I think priority-wise, the Master of Possession did less Master of Possession things and more interrogation. But because of the Mark of Tzeentch, if I really needed to get that Pact of Flesh out there, I'd pay the command point, and sometimes if I'm lucky, I got a command point on the Psychic Interrogation, so it was free. Just
there we go. Yeah.
So.
No, what's interesting is Master of Possession, just in my experience, that Pact of Flesh is just, you want to cast it every turn, but kind of the +1 strength and toughness is a lot more situational. So a lot of times you'd be kind of okay giving it up to gain some victory points on action. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Cool. So there's the HQs there. Now, in terms of the troops, quickly, I'm going to read them off for everyone because there's nothing too fancy here. 2 units of cultists and a unit of 5 legionaries. Just, you know, standard bolt guns, chainsword on the champ. Can you kind of talk about these troops choices? Did they really do anything for you, or are they more just you go as cheap as possible there to save points?
No, they absolutely did things for me. Cultists doing screening things, but I actually, so I don't know if you remember in the last codex what I was doing with Titatrators and R&D, right?
Oh yeah,
that's one of my signature moves. For end of game, I'm popping in, I'm getting my last points on R&D.
Yeah.
Well, you would think the way Titatrators change, that would break my heart. Absolutely does not. So there was one game in specific, I got matched up in game 2 against a Black Legion player. So we got a mirror match going.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I trail 2 cultists out onto the objective, and he takes a couple pop shots. I kill those 2 cultists, and I see like the confused look on his face. And then in my command phase, I do Titatrators, and boom, boom, those couple cultists are back on the objective, and I'm scoring those primaries. Yeah. And he goes, "Okay, I feel like I'm about to get a clinic on playing Black Legion."
Yeah. Well, that's so funny too, because I feel anytime you get this kind of out of phase movement, it's just really valuable for playing the mission. Like I know Death Guard, I think they can do the same trick with their version of the cultists. Yeah, the Poxwalkers. Just that kind of stuff. Anytime you see that in Codex, it's just so valuable. So I guess the question then is, why didn't you go 3x3 cultists? Because you have a legionary squad there, which costs 40 points more.
Because I wanted to have that clutch spot to where I could use maybe the shutting off the OPSEC in certain situations, or having, you know, there are certain armies that will pick up the cultists so fast that having that one tough squad of 5 man is actually a deterrence. Like if somebody's going to redeploy behind you or deep strike behind you, if they don't have to go back there and kill cultists, it's an easy answer. But if they've got to deal with 5 legionaries, they're going to go, okay, well, I'm going to jump back there, and he's still going to hold the objective, and that's going to be the game. So that it's and the chainsword is not bad, because that's actually if those 5 guys with no buffs, you know, you're hitting, that's 21 attacks with chainswords. That's a lot more attacks than they had previously. So you know, especially like when you're running into a squad of, you know, sisters that have meltas that you got close enough upon, you know, that's a good trade.
Yeah, no, I'm just volume of attacks anywhere you can find it, especially from a troop. So I'm just curious, because that stratagem, that 2 CP stratagem, I think it's like Bringers of Despair or something. So for those that don't know, there's a stratagem 2 CP on your command phase, or at some point until your next command phase, your one of your legionary units kind of has a 6-inch aura of no OPSEC, which is really cool because they have OPSEC themselves. Were there ever any big moments during LSO where that made a big primary flip?
No, what it did do is the knowledge of them being there changed their equation, and I never had to spend those 2 CP.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's like one of those things, if I go to that objective and I fail to kill one of those legionnaires, you know, so you know, a smart player is not going to take that calculated risk, knowing I could go there and there's nothing I can do to stop him from scoring.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, or I wonder if, like, you know, you had those 5 guys on objective and they could have made a play just to send like 6 OPSEC guys, and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to, because in his command phase they're just going to score anyway. It's a really powerful tool.
So and just sorry.
No,
just the threat of the stratagem, I think, is its weight in gold more than actually using it, because I never actually used it in Lone Star, but I was asked about it a lot.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And that kind of is a testament to the way you play, and the testament way people should play. You know, people talk about stratagems like, oh, like, you know, don't play Gotcha Hammer. It's really a benefit to both players, because often you can get the benefit of the threat without actually spending the resource. So just, I know, Russell, your people have talked to me out of the blue about your sportsmanship before. So I just want to say, you know, that's fantastic. And it shows that you're not really giving anything up by playing the game the right way. Moving on to the elite slot, you have, again, no surprise for anyone that's been following Cast Base Brains, you have a big brick of Terminators. Can you talk about how you loaded those out and how you use them?
Well, I got 4 meltas in them that I never really used that much, and 2 chainfist, which that did come into play. The 2 chainfists in the squad.
Oh,
but
yeah.
The rest is just cursed weapons and combi bolters, and the Black Rune. Now, I thought a lot about leading up to the event because there were so many other people doing the Black Rune on the 10 Terminators. Actually changing it because I didn't want to be doing the same thing everybody else did. But ultimately, I decided to go with the Terminators because of armor content and the 2 of them. I do think there's, you know, you could put it on a big unit of Possessed and it'd be just as good. with them being toughest 5. So I've considered that a lot. But those Terminators, I've always wanted to play more of them just because I love the Black Legion Terminator models so much. That ultimately,
so
and you know
iconic.
what? There were so many times where they went and stood on an objective and they held their own a lot longer than, you know, my old Terminators would.
Yeah.
And in some cases, even better than a brick of Scarab Assault Terminators from Thousand Suns, because Slaanesh, just the threat of them fighting first makes people want to stay away from them. And then also using that Demon Prince to throw Delightful Agonies on them.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. So,
it's just so powerful, the threat of that interrupt. There is the stratagem, which you know, people have mixed thoughts on. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's 2 CP at the start of the fight phase. You know, the one where your Terminators gain fights first, which I guess doesn't matter for you, but also are eligible when they're 3 inches away. Did you ever find a chance to use that?
I did actually use it. I think what's the other part of it? Was it the extra AP or is it an extra attack? I just know that
+1 attack. Yeah, +1 attack. Yeah.
I think it gives you like a free reroll on the charge too.
Yeah, there's
it's not a free reroll. You're paying 2 CP, but yeah, I did use it at one point, and if I had not used it, I don't think I would have made it through the target that I was attacking.
Interesting.
Because I had it, and I think my opponent was like looking, going, okay, I might be able to live through this. As soon as I started rattling off that stratagem, it was like, yeah, I'm not going to make it. So,
no.
And so it did a lot of CP. There's a couple of them for 2 CP that, you know, you're like, I don't think I'll ever get to use it in the new Nephilim stuff. But the baseline stats on all the 3 wound stuff is so good that you'll find yourself at the end of the game with 3 to 4 CP that you can use at a moment.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's like 2 different stratagems that, you know, I wish they were 1 CP, but they're as you say, they're there in case of emergency. There's the 2 CP. I think it's reroll charges and you get +1 AP, I think, or something weird like that. It's like some weird combo. And then there's the +1 attack, and then the fights first and are eligible to fight from 3 inches away. So it's cool to hear that you found some uses for those, because I know a lot of people kind of had some negative thoughts on those. Because they are Slaanesh, you do have the option to do the auto 6, the hit, a wound, or damage roll stratagem. Did you ever use that with the Meltas, or just didn't have the CP?
I did not, but the other Slaanesh stratagem was amazing. And again,
that's been my secret sauce. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And again, because I'm very forward about, you know, not having gotchas. Like I played probably, I think he's one of the best Harlequin players in the world in round 4. And, you know, he beat me in Alamo and he ended up winning Alamo. And then I played him again in round 4 at Lone Star, Bryce Chapman. And at one point I was like, hey, Bryce, don't forget about my Slaanesh stratagem, because I know you're going to fall back. Oh, and he goes, okay, I got it. And I said, Bryce, I said, let me read this before you finish your movement phase. And he goes, oh, wow, this just changes everything. So he went from having this tight little pocket around Abaddon and my Demon Prince to one, and it completely changed his whole game plan. And I think ultimately that helped me win the game. And I didn't need to use it anymore. But because that is such a big gotcha, I would never say, oh, here.
No, for sure. Yeah. So for those that aren't familiar, there's a stratagem, 2 CP for Slaanesh units. And I think this is one of the most underrated stratagems in the book. I think it's called like excessive violence or something. And when an opponent falls back from you, you can either consolidate 3 inches, which means you can get into other engagement ranges, or you can shoot at them after they fall back. And there's just so much kind of subtle uses you can find for that. It's tough because someone can't actually ever, like, first of all, they can't end a move with you and then fall back, or they won't be able to shoot you, or you can consolidate into something else. But also the threat of being able to shoot something after it falls back with those meltas and that bolter is just a lot of volume, is really powerful. Okay, cool. So we've got the 10 Terminator Slaanesh. Speaking of big Slaanesh bricks, up next we have the Chosen. I think you've got, is that 10 there I'm counting?
Yes.
10 with the icons, they always hit on 2s. Can you talk to me about the Chosen? Because they're a unit that got a lot of, I guess, negative press when the codex came out.
I think they're honestly one of our best units in the codex, because if you take Chosen, and you compare them like 10 Terminators, once you kind of throw some more gear around and all that, you're looking at a 100-point difference, and they have the same have the same exact output. So one thing that I learned early in my playtesting was when I throw Chosen forward, they get killed because they're not toughness 5. They don't have a 2 up.
Sure.
But one thing is, if you keep Chosen back and you have them late game, once your Terminators and your Possessed and everybody else are done fighting and beating each other up, well, guess what? 10 Chosen will flip the end of a game.
Oh yeah.
So, I think my last opponent, I think, caught on to that early because I had my Brick of Chosen sitting there, and he was using Harpies to bomb them as much as he could. So by the time I Chosen really got in the fight, I didn't have enough Chosen left. And that's ultimately, I think, what made the difference in my last game.
That's fair. Although, how good did it feel to have 3 wounds when you were being bombed? Tell me that didn't feel good.
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh, I did D3 mortal wounds. Oh, here's 2 mortal wounds. My next turn, I'm like, okay, here's Pack of Flesh. So,
yeah. Cool. Okay.
Nice.
I definitely we're going to go more through those matchups. I will say, not being able to take chainfists and power fists has really hurt on the Chosen when I've used them. But they're still super solid. AP3 is a really good number. 1 damage. They don't really care about any of the -1 damage out there, so that makes sense. I noticed you paid for a plasma pistol on the Chosen champion. I'm curious, did you ever try to was that just because you had him modeled, or did you ever try to intentionally kill him with rerolls so you can resurrect for movement later?
It's nothing that special. I was
I saw that. I was like, Russell's a genius. Wow, he's just next level.
I did think about that afterwards. I was like, oh, I could overcharge it, maybe kill, But ultimately, I had a list of 1995 points, and I was like, it's just like last year with my Flamers at Warzone use, and everybody's like, what's the big brain move behind the Flamers? It's like, well, it's because I got 5 points.
That's true. Hey, man, you paid for a ticket. You paid for 2,000 points. You're going to use your 2,000 points.
So, and I mean, ultimately, I was kind of kicking myself yesterday. I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, I had that plasma pistol. It might have made a small difference in the amount. I'm thinking about that last game so much.
That's fair.
That plasma pistol could have made a difference if I were to remember that I was just trying not to even out I wanted to go with 2,000. Always do that. So.
No, that makes complete sense. So let's talk about the rest of the elites. You have 2 units of Possessed. Great data sheet overall. What are kind of your thoughts on the Possessed and how you use them?
I love the Possessed. At first, I wasn't 100% sold on them because of the -2, but the fact that the toughness 5, the strength 5, and they move 9 inches, and they have a 5-up in bone and 3 wounds, I don't even care what they do in melee. But I started thinking about them in a different way, and I got really excited about them. I really remember liking the Greater Possessed, and now I look at their stat line, and each one of them is a Greater Possessed.
It is Greater Possessed, yeah.
5 attacks each, and then on Champion 6 attacks. So I got some little disc. I upgraded my old ones to 40mm guys, and then I've got my Greater Possesses, my champions to each one of the squads. And you know what? Early game, being able to get because in a lot of games, especially the corner missions, our secondaries aren't great, so you have to rely on some of the baseline secondaries, like Engage, for example. Well, guess what? Possessed and Bikes, that's a great way to start getting those Engage and get positioning early. And they're not incredibly expensive units for 5 of them. 140 something points for 5 guys that are T5, strength 5. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And again, you've got that just a lot of value that if they die, it's not the end of the world, but they can still do their job and hold their own. So then the last unit in the bike, you have the last unit in the list, you have a unit of 3 bikers in the past attack slot. Don't appear to have any upgrades. It's just combi bolters and chain swords. So again, was that just building for Engage, or did you find the bikers useful?
I find the bikers okay. So originally I built it for Engage, and then I had a couple big brain moves in Lone Star that absolutely started scoring me points early. Because one of the things is like the Long War. Well, Long War is kind of hard to score sometimes. Well, say there's sometimes, especially with player place, somebody will have like an elite slot choice up in a corner of a building, stepping on an objective. Well, you got to get some models there to get Long War for 2 points and get Engage all at the same time. So you say, you know what? Here it is. Here comes 20-inch advance, and I'm on the objective. Or if they had to have a few more models on it, I might even do Red Corsairs, 20-inch advance, and still attack and count as 2 models. So here we are, turn 1 from way across the board, getting the Long War and Engage. So it's like you don't think you're able to score those secondaries that early in the game, but a little squad of bikes with a key stratagem or key in the right position, you can score 5 secondaries right out the gate. All of a sudden, you're looking like a Necron.
No, I love that so much. One thing I thought was really interesting was one of the relics that kind of stood out when people first read the codex out of all the legions entirely was, I think it's called the Cloak of Conquest. It's kind of like Rites of War, or I guess Rites of the Long War for us. A 6-inch aura of OPSEC for core and character units. You don't have that on your list, even though you're playing Black Legion. Was that a relic you ever tried and then dropped it? Or what was the thinking there?
I did try, but I feel like because there's so many other powerful things in the list that you can only have that in one spot. But if you make your list killy enough, it doesn't matter if you're OBSEC or not.
That's true.
So I mean, ultimately there was a few points that I wish I'd have had some more OBSEC in my list, and it might have helped me. But you know, ultimately my master possession doesn't do a lot of moving. And if I'm losing my back objective, I'm in bigger trouble than needing OBSEC there. And ultimately, I decided, because it came down to it, I wanted to buff the Disco and the Demon Prince to make them worth taking, you know, because that's a lot of points in characters, Abaddon and those. So if I'm going to take them, I'm going to buff them. And then at the same time, if I'm going to take the Terminators, a brick of 10 of them, to go out there and sit somewhere, it'd be silly not to take the Black Rune. So at that point, you run out of command points. So I chose the other relics and warlord traits over that. It's a really good relic, and I'd love to use it. I always play Space Marines going, I wish I had that. Talking about Rights of War. And then I finally have it. I'm like, I'm not going to use it. So.
Well, what's so interesting is, because normally the thing everyone thinks is, oh, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a bunch of Terminators and I'm going to make them OBSEC. I'm a 40k genius. I'm kind of thinking, though, in this list, in Black Legion specifically, because you have the stratagem to basically like almost heroically intervene because you can activate from 3 inches away. If they're on the objective, you can kind of just cover any objective the Terminators are on, and they can't send like random guardsmen or witches there, because you'll just activate that. You'll fight your, move 3 inches to fight and just kill, of course, whatever little OBSEC, riffraff are on the objective. So actually, that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Plus, again, you've got so much damage in this list, like a ridiculous amount of units that are all very killy at what the things are going to fight. Makes more sense to tool for that.
And I can tell you this, you take a Leviathan squad of 9 warriors, right?
Yeah.
That's a really hard unit to get through. I mean, that's a well, I did it several times throughout the tournament, where you take a brick of chosen, all wounds and all hits, and a Leviathan squad of the bully squad of 9 Tyranid warriors. They just shoot them up and they were gone. So it didn't matter if they were OBSEC or not. The chosen, I mean, my very first game was against a really good Tyranid player from the Houston area, and he did really well post or pre Nephilim, and I was like, oh, here come those big bully squads again, and I don't know if I can deal with them. And this time he got up to me, and I was the one making the charges, and those Tyranid warriors never got to fight or shoot because those chosen just chop right through them.
Love to hear it. Warms my heart, Russell. Last thing I want to talk about, just in terms of the list, was you don't have a Dark Apostle in there, which is kind of the traditional attack everyone's bringing. You bring the Slaanesh units, then you bring the Dark Apostle, so you can advance the charge. Or you make the Terminator brick, just 9 killable. Did you feel you missed out on that advance and charge, or was kind of the threat of going to Red Corsairs? Was that kind of the same thing for you?
Yeah, because you're not going to advance and charge that much in the game. And when you absolutely need to, you're going to fail that prayer. Every time.
That's true.
You're sitting there in your opponent's turn, and you're going, you know what? Next turn, I'm gonna pray, and I'm gonna advance a charge, and it's gonna make you're gonna roll that one. So ultimately, to get the Dark Apostle, I have to give up something. What do I give up? I give up my Demon Prince, my Disco Lord, and then the whole synergy of my list starts falling apart. And I feel like I need the Master Possession, because if I have the Demon Prince, I'm giving up Arbor the Witch. So I think at the end, it really comes down to, do I take the Dark Apostle, or do I take the Master Possession? And the Master Possession wins out 9 times out of 10.
Sure. No, and that makes complete sense. Again, it's all about the reliability, like you're saying. And you can't, again, that one on the prayer is just going to be a complete backbreaker. You could spend 2 CP to auto pass it, but who the hell has 2 CP these days just laying around?
Yeah.
Really not Chaos Space Marines.
No, at that point, I'd rather just spend the 1 CP and the Red Corsairs, which is amazing to advance a Demon Prince with wings across the board and then take somebody's objective with them.
So I'm curious for that stratagem. Did you ever do anything besides Red Corsairs?
Yes, I did. One of my favorite ones to jump over to is Word Bearers, and this is actually a practice game right before Lone Star.
Sure.
I played Robert Sherigan from Goonhammer, and we.
Rob, great guy.
So yeah, he's a great guy. So I played his Thousand Suns, and there was one point in the game I was like, man, I got to get up in there, and he's just going to chew me up with mortal wounds. So I took that Disco Lord, and I made him Word Bearers, and I sent him right up. So not only was I rerolling all wounds, but now he was my most forward model for his psychic phase.
Yeah.
And those Feel No Pains just completely ate up a psychic phase and changed the whole equation how he played it. And I think it helped seal the deal for me in a matchup that I didn't feel like I could win.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's an absolutely huge piece. Yeah, I've thought about it. Like I randomly have thoughts, like I'll be in the shower and I'll think like, oh, that could be a really cool application of the stratagem. You change them to XYZ Legion and X spot. What I really want to do is load up a big brick of Terminators, make them Iron Warriors, and send them into like a Death Guard army or something. There's so many cool things you can do.
Or even more, like say there's, and again, going back to that one game I keep thinking about, and I just had that stratagem to put on my brick of Terminators when I knew his whole army was going to come for him, and then make him creations of Bob to fight on death.
Beautiful.
So just like gotta keep your nose in the codex and keep thinking about it.
Not for sure. Did you ever use that on Abaddon himself?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
So
gotcha. That's kind of spicy.
Again, I probably could have in that last game, but I'd actually already used the Red Corsairs on the Demon Prince to go steal an objective.
Yeah, because it is once per game, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's once per game.
Okay, cool.
If you got it once per turn, it would be way too powerful.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the most powerful stratagem that Black Legion has.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. Actually, the last list question I have before we move on, have you experimented with things like Venom Crawlers and Demon Engines at all? Because that's kind of the other direction people can go.
I have, and I think if I was actually going to try to compete with them, the only way to really use those, I would say, would be Word Bearers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just effectively wise. But I mean, I think I have all the models and it's fun, and I've done a few mess around games with. But I think if you're going to try to compete with Demon Engines and the current meta, you need to play Word Bearers, and I'm not willing to give up Black Legion to, So I mean, I feel like I could do. I feel like I could do a lot of work with Word Bearers or Emperor's Children or Creations of Biles or Red Corsairs. I actually think all four of those have a lot more competitive routes, especially if you leave Abaddon at home and actually build those lists right.
Yeah.
Those four legions all have a better route to victory than Black Legion. But for me, Black Legion is strictly the love of the Legion and not what's the most competitive.
I love that. Okay, Russell. So you've talked about the list. You've talked about some different options. I love how creative you got with loading out your HQs. But let's talk about kind of the weakest part of the chaos-based brain overall game right now, the secondaries. I've seen people say some horrible things about the secondaries, and frankly, there's a lot of truth to those. But you scored pretty well in most of your games. What kind of secondaries were you picking?
I did take some of the CSM ones in certain games.
Okay.
There's certain games that, you can't take them in. But like, for example, with Necrons, you need to be super aggressive to beat them. So the Law is a really good one to play against Necrons. There's a few missions that even Despoil Dominions isn't a bad one to get started off with. Like if you can reliably score 10 on banners in a game because somebody could be aggressive or whatever, Despoil Dominions isn't a bad one either. Because there's like, for example, there's a few missions that there's objectives right outside your deployment zone. Like literally right out.
I think like Tide of Conviction, for example, is one where there's two right in front of you. And there's just, so for people that don't remember the secondary or haven't looked at it, it's basically do an action that completes at the end of your next command phase or something. It's 4 VP for objectives outside your deployment zone, 1 VP for actions or objectives inside. It also has a cool little rider. I think that on a 4-up, they can't do actions on those objectives. Did that ever come up, or is that just kind of a cute thing to have?
It didn't come up. But it's a cute thing to have. Yeah, I think there was one matchup that I probably could have taken it with against the Necron player. But I thought to myself, if I'm hoping he's not able to do his secondaries on my objectives and hoping he rolls a 4-up, then I've lost the game anyway. Because I think in that, specifically the Necron matchup, if you're not hyper aggressive against him, regardless how much shooting or the Silent King or Tzeentch, there's no way to beat him. Because they're just going to score their points by the end of round 3. So Despoil Dominions may work on that matchup, but I think you need to be leaving a few troops behind and taking your whole army across the table to keep Necrons in their own deployment zone.
That makes complete sense. I think there's one which I think is really cool for your list. I think it's Rise to Glory, where basically you have characters do kills in melee. And oh boy, do you have some characters that can get some kills in melee. Did you ever take that one?
Yeah, I took it in a few games. I took it, especially like in my Tyranid games. You got Tyranid Primes and Carnifexes and all those small little things. There was another game I took it in. I'm trying to remember what what I use it against, but there's a few times where it's like it's the same. It's the same way. One of the Necron ones that everybody's like, oh, it's so easy for him to score. The only difference is they can score it all in one turn. You know, we have to, we're capped 5 per turn, but there's some good opportunities to get free command points, which really get the army going. Especially like my first game against the Tyranid player, I used that one. And every model that I killed, you know, I'm rolling 2d6 below what a 13 wound model or
you know, it's crazy. Yeah.
So like it's free command points to get out there and kill something with Abaddon. So have fun with Abaddon, your Demon Prince, your Disco Lord, get command points and victory points. So Rise to Glory is a really good one, and I think it matches a really good aggressive scrapping style CSM thing this book can specialize in. I think the shooting that we got is the same shooting that we've always had. You know, maybe we get a little extra AP on bolters on bikes if you do things, you know, but you have to spend a lot to tech in to get those next 2 bolters on bikes. But like what this new codex does really well is scrap. And Eurohammer, so Rise to Glory in certain matchups is really good. You know, I think in a way, even like if you play somebody that has 14 baby knights, you could bring it down. But Rise to Glory is pretty good too because of the command points, which just powers your army up even more to just keep rolling.
Yeah, so it's so good because like you roll 2d6 under their wounds, and they're all like 12 wounds. So you're basically like almost guaranteed like 4 or 5 CP, which is just fantastic. Because Black Legion, unless you take the Warlord trait, I think there's like a 5-up CP regen. I mean, you've got so few slots already. You don't want to spend any more on that. You have nowhere really to put it, so that makes complete sense. Okay, so it sounds like it was a blend. There's not like you're not kind of like Necrons where you show up to the table. You've got like I'm going to take these secondaries every single game, but you kind of adapt. It's kind of like a mix of engage, psychic interrogation. You said with the Master of Possession, bring it down, or excuse me, Rise to Glory, for example, Long War. Occasionally the Black Legion one. I'm just curious, stepping outside of Black Legion for a bit. Have you experimented with other legions? Because I'm curious, because other legions have way better secondary games, I feel, or can have.
I've read a lot into the other legions, but I haven't actually put them on the table because my main focus has been Black Legion. I think the only reason why I've read into them so much is memorizing the Legion traits so I could use the best Legion trait at the right time in the game.
Sure. That makes complete sense,
I guess I theory hammered, I have a weekly sparring partner, your Bobkov, and I think he's actually the best chaos player in the world.
He's fantastic,
You know, and once he gets rolling again, he's gonna be crushing everybody. You know, we'll be second and third when he gets rolling again. Yeah. But I mean, we've theory crafted so much back and forth, and that's why I do think so highly of Word Bearers, Red Corsairs, Creations of Bile, and Emperor's Children. You know, because I see all these stratagems, the secondaries, and I'm like, man, I could do a lot with that. But you know.
Yeah, I remember there was actually someone I was talking to. They were playing a different Chaos Army, and they mentioned like they played this really good Emperor's Children player that shut down their Word Bearers army. I was like, yeah, that just happens, but I think you still have some tools. And they're like, it was your Bobkov, I think. I was like, oh, I mean, that's just, I'm sorry, man, you're probably losing that game.
Yeah, no, he's definitely like, I always compare him to like a Chaos Jedi Master or something. So,
yeah, that makes complete sense.
So, I mean, I get to go to a clinic every Tuesday on how to play Chaos. So yeah, a lot of even like, I've always been a really shooty type Chaos person because we didn't have the staying power, and even when we didn't have the staying power, he always found ways to scrap with those lists and make it work. So a lot of my current list and play style actually comes from seeing how well he's done with that type of play style and actually having the staying power now with it. You know, it's super dangerous. And I love it.
I'm looking forward to seeing him do well somewhere and getting him back on. But okay, so I know you're super hardcore Black Legion. You've been the OG for years. So I guess let's move on from other legions. Part of it is I feel we're very much an army that plays differently in different matchups. Again, just to give an example of Necrons or Sisters, they show up to the table, they kind of just do their thing. Whereas we're kind of adapting. Some games you have to be very aggressive. Some games you can kind of take your time. I guess we don't have to go through every game, but can you kind of talk about maybe a few matchups you played where you maybe had some cool pieces of tech or made some interesting plays that, or kind of give advice to other cast-based Marine players and how they can win those matchups?
Yeah, I think with Chaos-based Marines, you have to have a generalized idea how you can deal with things. Like you got to think of the different layouts, like the corner-to-corner missions where it's not Hammer and Anvil, it's not Dawn of War. those other missions, you've got to have a plan, because the banners aren't good for those missions. You literally have one guy in your deployment zone, and if you're doing banners, you're going to score 6 points, and you're going to be scrapping on those objectives the whole game. So in those cases, like banners, I think is a real easy go-to. It's a comfort food, but you have to be able to say, all right, this isn't recover the relics where banners is going to be easy to get. I need to engage, and you got to think about, how am I going to play those maps and get engaged? And I think that's where the bikes and the possess come in. So to kind of feed into those matchups, like I think when you play Tyrannid, you have to be conservative. When you play Sisters and you play Necrons, you have to be super aggressive, but you also got to take a look at what mission you're on and how their list is built, because not all those lists are built the same. I think one advantage you have at FLG tournaments is player place terrain.
Sure.
And I think that's actually something really important when you go to build your list. Like, for example, if you're going to an FLG tournament or a GW tournament, you're going to have a short distance between buildings. So an army that can scrap will work really good with them, especially if you place terrain with that in mind. Yeah. But then say, like Warzone Houston's coming up here in Houston, I think in September. They do TO place terrain, and they have big buildings, but they can be spread out. So an army that's really good in melee might not work at that. So you may have to go, for this tournament, I need to switch over to a more shooting heavy list.
Okay.
So I think that's the key to playing CSM pre-codex and post-codex, is trying to be flexible, knowing the terrain, knowing what you're going to do in each situation and each matchup, And I think ultimately that's what hurt me in Game 6, is because I got my Tyrannid matchup round 1, and I respected the Tyrannids. I made sure that I was going to be the one fighting first, and that took some caginess at the very beginning of the game, and that was okay. And then I went through Sisters, Harlequins. Man, it was a rough run. Necrons, another Black Legion player, and then I got to Tyrannids round 6, and I felt like I'd been so aggressive the last few games. I needed to pull the reins back. And even though I knew Reaper of Obliterax was out there, I still didn't respect it enough. And I got Abaddon killed. And if I held Abaddon in that game, that would have been the first thing that I could have done to turn that game over in my favor. There's a few things at the end of the game that I did that I look back now and I'm like, man, I was so close to 6-0, and there's nothing my opponent could have done about it. Because I went second. And I missed those opportunities. Not to take away from him. That was a great opponent. He was another really good sportsman. It was like one of those things. He was such a good sportsman. I think by the time I got to the last round, I didn't even care if I went 6-0 or he went 6-0.
We
had such a great time. We
spent I'd love to hear that.
This is the first time I've ever met him, played him. Here, let me. Man, he's. I'll have to look at that here in a second before we get off the call, because I do want to give him a shout out, because he was an amazing opponent. It's somebody I met the first time. I'm playing for 6-0. And through the game, even if I lost it, I didn't care. He was that good of an opponent. Never met him before, and I think that's what Warhammer is all about, meeting great guys.
No, I love to hear that. And and just for anyone that's thinking about attending tournaments, I feel like there's a lot of talk online about how bad games can go, and people have poor sports and stuff. But really, I think that's the vast majority of opponents you're going to play. I think like once every 4 or 5 tournaments, I have a game where there's any sort of difficulty. The vast majority of people want great games, and it's really credit to both you and your opponent that you're able to have this really friendly dynamic, even at the top tables of a major. So big credit to both of you. Okay, let's talk about Sisters, because I haven't finished watching the game, but on paper, I feel that's a bad matchup for you, because they can just hit so hard with so many small little pieces, whereas you're kind of a bit slower. You've got kind of these big targets everywhere. You've got these big bricks of Chosen. You got Possessed, you got Terminators, and none of those want anything to do with a bunch of Zephyrin coming in with all the buffs, or Pensha coming in. What was kind of your approach to winning that matchup?
I actually, in those matchups, was using those cheaper units to get out front early.
Okay.
Like you're Possessed to run to the corners, because like that, I think I played conversion on that mission. So I used my Possessed and my bikes and some of my smaller troops to run to the corners, start scrapping early, because if you can get rid of those Repentia and either funneling them or making them attack a unit that's not going to cripple you, then you can use whatever other tech that you got to just plow through the rest of their army. And ultimately, I think because Bloody Rose is so good, and because of the nerfs, there's one thing people aren't taking into account when it comes to Sisters, is they fear the meltas like there's something. They used to be something. but that's because people would take Bloody Rose, and then they would take that other one where they could come out of the Rhino, advance, and shoot with no penalties.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody's got to take into account those multi
or something. Yeah, yeah.
So I think you gotta, in a way, with Sisters, if you want to get them, don't have as much respect for those multi-meltas as you would 12 months ago, because if you do, you're going to be too scared to be aggressive, and then the Repentia will come to you and they'll attack what they want to attack. Instead, you need to bring the fight to them and take the melta shots to the face with your new 3-wound models that are faster and scrappier. So
yeah, well, I mean, if you put a Field of Pain on 3-wound models, it's actually kind of tough for D6 damage to get through. Like, there's going to be a lot of wasted shots in there, just dice doing dice things. That makes complete sense.
And if you can make Repentia attack Abaddon, that's even better too, because you can fight on death. But if you fight on death, it doesn't matter, because Abaddon's only taking those 3 wounds. So in those cases, the 3 wounds is good. So,
no,
but I
mean,
mean,
it makes complete sense. And just a quick thing, just want to go shout to your opponent. I double checked in BCP. It appears round 6 you played. I'm sorry if I messed up the name. Is VSR or VSR?
Yeah, VSR is, I think, how he said it.
Okay.
He's just an amazing player.
Cool. Shout out to him. It was a close game too. It was 78-87. That's one of those games, as you're saying, a few small things go differently, and you're right there in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, we're playing Abandoned Sanctuaries, and it literally came down to my last turn and what I did. I tried to switch objectives, being clever, and had I just stayed on the center objective, because I ended up only getting 4 in primaries, I would have got that objective for sure, and it'd been my 6-0. But like I said, I can't take anything away from him, because he was behind most of that game, which is where I like to be. I like to be behind, and then coming from behind. That's like my specialty.
It's a great feeling.
Yeah, but he was behind most of that game, and he went first. So I mean, everything was in my favor, and he pulled it out. He played it smart, and he was a great opponent. And I mean, I've thought about that game a lot, you know. Yeah. And the thing was, it's not like the rest of my games. I had some really great opponents. This is probably one of my toughest tournaments, opponent-wise, matchup-wise. It's just like playing Bryce Chapman or Matt Tweedle, my teammate. These guys are top-tier players. So it's like, you know, it's like one of those things. It almost feels like if you watch SEC football, it's like to get to the SEC, go through Alabama and LSU and all these other. And it's like, so
I'll tell you what, it makes you better though. It makes you better. There's no point in playing, you know, guys that can't really give you a challenge. I mean, you're getting a tough test at those tournaments, which is fantastic.
Exactly. I think that, as the saying goes, to beat the champ, you got to beat the champ. So
absolutely, yeah. And we know you'll be right back there at the top tables, and you're going to learn from those mistakes. One thing I want to explore a bit more is you talked about how on some train sets or in some matchups you need to pivot to more of a shooting build. What would that look like for you? It doesn't have to be an exact list, but more like what kind of units are you looking at? Because we have pretty limited shooting options on the whole.
I think that's I've been thinking about it a lot, like because when you look at Havocs, they're not great. They're good because they're cheap. But they're not great. And then
one of the funniest things to me,
a demon engineless might have the staying power. You know, that's really, I'm kind of worried about the open table mindset to where you got to shoot. So hopefully, I'll be honest, I haven't, because I like the obliterators, but I actually like the older obliterators better.
The new, I feel like the old ones, they were like not great, but they were occasionally very, very good. You just spike those rolls, and now they're just consistently average, which makes it easier for the opponent to play around. Like previous codex, obliterators would just randomly nuke their army sometimes, and now it's just you're just gonna consistently shoot a few shots. You know, it's not gonna, especially without being able to ignore cover. In Black Legion, it's a bit tough for them. Plus, not being core, one of the strengths of your list is you can just make any unit and just turbocharge it with Abaddon. I guess except for the possessed, really, but and losing that synergy is a bit tough. I want to talk about now, there's a few people have questions. If you're okay, I'll kind of run through some of the reader questions from our Discord that people really want to know more about. A few of the questions I'm not going to read out loud. Questions about, okay, we're moving on. But there's a few, a lot of people want to ask about Harkin World Claimer, the jump pack guy. That's the potential Chaos Lord. I don't think he's any good. Have you ever experimented with him?
I did. I think when I first opened the codex for the first time and I saw him, I was like, oh, I really like this data sheet. And I was like, man, this is really good. It's the second chapter master. He can scrap. I mean, but then I started looking at the warlord traits and relics, and I'm like, if I'm going to spend 150 points or upwards of that,
Yeah.
I mean, a Demon Prince with wings beats out Harkin all day long.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you put all the buffs to him. So like,
yeah. Plus, he's a psyker. He gives you that feel no pain on the Terminators are chosen, which is, I mean, that's worth its weight in gold, you know?
Yeah. So I mean, I think Harkin's a really cool model. I do think massively upgraded him. So I think for anybody that's wished he's better so they could play him, I think he's pretty good. But he's not a Lord Discord, he's not a Demon Prince, he's not Abaddon. So I think it's like, if you're going to spend that many points on a model, there's so much better options. But again, if you wanted to go for the list where Arbor the Witch could be a thing, you know, maybe he's the Demon Prince, but I don't think so. It's just the -3 and the 3 damage is just too good.
Yeah, that's where that strength 8 too. And part of it too is that Harkin, I think he does he gives the full Abaddon treatment to Raptors. I think we get the wound rerolls too, but I mean Raptors, no offense to anyone that likes Raptors, I've been a bit disappointed. There's really no damage there. So I think you're just kind of throwing good points after bad at that point.
Yeah, and again, that going back to kind of that equation with the wounds, Raptors and Warp Talons, I think they both fall into that trap of being too many points to be a 2-wound model. And the 2-wound model not having the staying power.
Yeah, they're basically just Assault Marines, which I mean, no one's clamoring down the door to run Assault Marines. So that makes complete sense. I guess one of the questions that I was really curious about was we talked a bit about how you use the Legion trait strat. Are there any things you worry are going to be FAQ'd, I guess, in your list or the codex in general? And I'm not talking positive. Like, obviously, like, there's all the Forge World stuff, which right now, if you're familiar, just don't work at all because the Legion, or excuse me, the Trader Stardust keyword that's obviously going to get fixed. Is there anything you'd be worried, like, negatively FAQ'd?
Well, I think there's a few things that are like super overhyped. Again, like Abaddon. He's in a way he's already taken a nerf going up to 300 points and losing a lot of the things that made him really great, along with his upgrades. So don't get me wrong, I know that's controversial to say, but I do feel like I'm missing some things that I had before that I don't now.
Sure. Yeah.
With all the other positive changes, you know, it's I'm okay with it. You know.
Abaddon, we don't want the old book back. Trust me. Don't get us wrong. We're very happy now.
And I will say Abaddon definitely won me some games in this tournament, but at the same time, at the 300 point cost, you know, it kind of, you know, so I don't want to see that nerf, but I could see, because of the internet and people not actually doing actual play testing, saying taking Pact of Flesh away from infantry or anything that's not infantry core or something like that.
Yes. So right now, one of the issues that
or Demon.
People have, I guess, identified an issue where you can heal Abaddon around his wound cap, which honestly, I can see both arguments on that, because I don't think you can heal Phoenix Lords, for example. I mean, but Katana healing, unless you one-shot them, they're going to heal a wound, and then unless you one-shot them, they're probably going to heal 2 wounds again by the following turn.
Right.
So, I mean, I can see arguments both ways.
Had the ability to heal in the previous codex. It was because he had Nurgle, and you could just pay CP and roll a dice and he'll deal D3 back, which I used a lot.
Yeah,
you know,
and part of it too, it's, I mean, healing Abaddon's not even that good, because when you heal him, you get the heal, but when you heal something else, you get a heal plus resurrection, plus the extra movement. Like when you heal a Terminator, you get like the 3 or 4 inches of movement in front. Abaddon, you just put wounds back on the wound counter. I mean, that's great, don't get me wrong, but it's not like Abaddon's going to solo an entire army. So I can see both arguments there. I've seen just some crazy takes about nerfs that are needed. And I think that's cast Space Marines are very low on the list of things I think need to be fixed in the game right now. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do feel like there's going to be something with Pact of Flesh. I mean, if my gut says my gut, and which will be sad, but you know, at the same time, like it's not gonna hurt me that bad. I think it'll hurt. I think it will hurt some players that are using it, but I mean, like for the most part, like you said, I'm using it on Terminators, Possessed, and Chosen. I think I healed Abaddon maybe one time out of the entire 6 games. And that was my Necron game when I was in there scrapping with the Silent King and all that. So
and the other thing I see is people saying it's too unfair how I can use the Master Possession to kill guys and resurrect guys out Deep Strike to get easier charges. Take that away. I could not care less. Make it so we always have to make a 9 out of Deep Strike. Could not care less. Doesn't change anything at all. And then you don't Deep Strike any games, do you? I mean, you're not Deep Striking the Terminators, are you?
So I do maybe 50% of my games I'll deep strike the Terminators, and that's just
let's talk about that. Yeah.
Terrain, to hide them behind. But,
yeah.
I think I've surprised a lot of people. I don't look at my Terminators as a deep strike. I look at more as a reinforcement, which means a lot of times I might be releasing the Chosen that way and get that guaranteed charge, and the Terminators are replacing them where they were. You know, like in my game against the Sisters, my Chosen went forward, and I used my Terminators to reinforce my home objective, with Celestine eventually charged, and my Terminators killed, and then Celestine rolled a 1, which was great.
Oh, you love to see that. It was a great
moment, not to spoil the game, but it was a really cool moment. Joe from War Games Live sounded like he was about to have a heart attack. I went back and watched it.
Oh man, so, you love to see that. Erwin Gilliman fails to get, or stuff like that. You love to see it. Okay, cool. So I do have to ask, you never deep struck Abaddon, right?
Never.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because then you're losing like 2 turns of his command phase stuff. That just seems absolutely. So I guess for running Abaddon, you're kind of running him more up like the center of your castle, right? He's not like going off to flanks by himself. He's staying with stuff to buff generally.
Again, it depends on the game. In my game against the Sisters, he ended up releasing up the middle. Like he followed my Chosen and my Disco Lord and all that stuff up the middle, but he eventually released and went to the back objective. Same thing in my first Tyranid game. And there's a few games where, like my Necron game, I was like, I have to shut him down from moving across the board. And Abaddon ended up making a charge across the board by himself into his objective, killed all of the Scorpec destroyers on that objective. And he had to live through an entire turn of shooting CTAN powers and melee, which was, I was holding on for dear life. And then my Terminators showed up. And then Abaddon got behind him, but by that point, Abaddon had shut his entire movement phase down.
Yeah.
And he needed a 10-inch charge to get there. So, I mean, it was just one of those amazing moments where Abaddon released by himself and went and won me the game. So.
Yeah. Well, you love to see it, because one thing I really enjoy about kind of 9th edition, it does have some flaws, of course, but I like that they're willing to take risks with special characters and make them feel as good as they should. They'll let Abaddon have his epic moment. They'll let Mortarion be super tanky. They're going to let they'll let like Drazar from Dark Eldar, really shine. I like that they're not afraid to take risks and let the characters really shine. So I guess in terms of shooting, one thing I've been experimenting with, which I can't decide on, and this is just more of just like friend to friend, I'm curious what your thoughts are. I can't decide about Contemptors, because I keep looking for shooting options and keep getting disappointed. As you mentioned, their Havocs are really cheap.
Yeah, so
they're good for being cheap.
With Contemptors, the CP is, it's not, that's the part that it's just too much at that point. Hellbirds,
every time I get Hellbirds,
go with anything.
Don't do anything.
One thing Decimators lacked in the past was damage reduction. With the new stratagem to throw the damage reduction out there, Decimators may be something that we all take a look at again, because they don't cost CP.
Yes. I think they're so good right now, and I just haven't run them personally because I'm waiting for the FAQ to make it legal, because I don't want to have to, ask my practice partners to make an exception. I mean, those Decimators with those claws, they're going to be always hitting on 2s and Black Legion on the charge, and they've got this Flamer, which is D6+2 now. And I just realized this the other day, they have a 2 damage Flamer. I totally forgot about that. That's strength. It's like a heavy Flamer.
2 damage, yeah.
Yeah, a heavy Flamer with 2 damage, and they can take 2 claws, or like a claw and a gun. And if you don't buy the Soul Burners, you buy like a claw arm, you save 10 points per arm. And minus 1 damage strat, and they don't bracket either. That's, I mean, oof, that's a unit right there.
Another unit I think not to sleep on if you want to get into the shooting is maybe rubrics with flamers and a drill.
Oh, okay, talk to me about that. Have you tried that?
So, I mean, I actually put a lot of thought into it, and I wanted to lean into scrapping. But if you think about 9 or 10 rubrics in a drill, so you're looking at 96 flamers that are 12 inches with the Let the Galaxy Burn. So these are 96 flamers that all have +2.
Yeah, so it's plus 20 auto hits. I mean, that's
it's boom. And I mean, when you're coming out of the drill, you get them there. They don't have their Legion trait, so they don't actually have a 5-up, I believe. The 5-up invone that rubrics have always had, because that's now right, Thousand Suns Legion trait. But they still have all those dust. They still have armor and contempt. And if you pop them right next to a drill, which now as Black Legion would be hitting on 2s, and there's your 5 meltas, your Volkites, and then you got 10 rubrics. that are showing up on a board somewhere. So I can see where maybe something like that might work at Warzone Houston.
I can see that being really good. I mean, plus they still have the Psyker who gets one of the Dark Hereticus powers, so you can just cast a 4-up invuln on themselves, no problem.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Wow. Ooh, that's spicy. And because it's not Thousand Suns, there's no one else competing for that. Because in Thousand Suns, you can only give one unit a 4-up invuln. You don't care, man. You're just gonna put on the rubrics. Yeah, that's really good. One of my friends,
I put some thought into it, and plus I planted Black Legion rubrics a long time ago that I've been waiting to use. So they might see, you know, a return to the table along with a return to the table for the role at Warzone, because I think that'll be good. So
one thing
what else shipping wise that doesn't cost CP. The Land Raiders, I mean, on an open table could be really good.
Yeah. You said Land Raiders?
Yeah, I don't know if you've looked at the defensive stats.
They're chunky. They just don't do anything, but they're chunky.
Yeah. But I mean, the last cannons are now what, D6+2 damage and toughness 9. I mean, if you have to get into one of those situations where you know you're gonna have to do more shooting than scrapping, I think you have some options. I don't think you're not gonna perform as well as you would in the scrapping. But I mean, you can't look at a player packet and train and go, okay, I'm going to do the same thing that's been working for me at all these other events, because you know that's how you show up to an event and you get punched in the mouth and go 2 and 4 and you go, how did I let this happen to me? You know?
Yeah, no, definitely you have to be prepared. And I love that you're willing to experiment with different things. I really wish Leviathans didn't cost CP, because even without core, I still think they could be really cool in Black Legion, give them like a fist and a gun, and they're always hitting on 2s. But that's one of those things, you know, we'll adapt. I have to give you a lot of credit because you got all these, you know, creative ideas. One thing I've been experimenting with for Black Legion, it's a list that brings in actually Plague Marines and Rubric Marines, and we bring the Cloak of Conquest for the OBSEC aura. So we've got these really durable, like really weird and killy bodies that are OBSEC. But that list is really different than yours. It brings in a Terminator sorcerer just to have access to the relic, to the Veil of Darkness. I wish that didn't require a Terminator character, because fitting that Terminator character in there feels really bad. But yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Well, Russell, I gotta say, you know, when we talked last year, I knew we were going to talk again. I knew once you got a new book, you were right back in there. So again, one last time, a big congratulations to you for finishing so high at the Lone Star Open and doing it with great sportsmanship and doing it with your favorite army to boot. I mean, that's kind of the story. Everyone wants to compete at 40K and have their army they love, you know, eventually get a glow up. It's got to feel so good there to be back there with your Black Legion again, right there at those top tables.
Yeah, no, it's a really good feeling. It was really good. I was on cloud 9 all the way through Lone Star.
That makes complete sense. So where can we see you next? It sounds like you're going to be at Warzone Houston. I think that's end of September.
I think there's the Warzone Houston. There's also the Iron Cage GT in Dallas. There's another one in Lubbock. And I'm also going to go to, at the end of October, I'm going to go to the US Open in Kansas City. Really,
that's fantastic.
Forward to all those. And then I'm going to end the year at Rise of the Empire GT, which is now a TCC event. So I think they'll be advertising a lot after Warzone Houston. That's going to be a really good one. It's the University of Clear Lake.
Awesome. Cool. And one last question. Do you think we're going to see you at LVO this year?
Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it for the world. So
yeah. Well, Russell, I just want to thank you so much for coming on here today and sharing your kind of love and knowledge of Black Legion. Again, you love to see someone shine with their original faction. So big credit to you. Russell, any final thoughts or just words of inspiration for any cast Space Marine players out there?
Don't be afraid to ignore the internet. Open your codex, be creative yourself. Don't listen to the internet, because the internet's just going to lead you to do the things that you know aren't going to work. So yeah, read Warphammer. He's incredibly. I mean, seriously, all joking aside, Warphammer is a good place for information, and so is Robert from Goonhammer. Just at least to get those juices flowing. And I think we're a really good community. So I know a lot of people have reached out, you know, to me in general just to get some ideas to list. So don't be afraid to reach out, because the chaos community is so much better than all the other communities.
It really is. Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like there's a lot of chaos fans that are never happy, but the ones that actually are playing the game and still actively involved just love it. I mean, it's funny how it's always like the most evil factions have a lot of the best, a lot of the kindest people. Yeah,
thanks. Evil, they're actually the good guys.
Well, of course. I mean, what are we talking about? They've got a freaking corpse emperor they're worshiping, and they call us the weird ones.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one last final shout out again to Russell. At LVO. When he got on stage, got his best cast Space Marines, you know, award for the year. He just turned to the audience and shouted, "Death to the false emperor! I stood up and clapped for you, man. That was an iconic moment. But yeah, again, thanks so much for the kind words, Russell, and thanks so much for coming on and sharing your love with the faction, your experience, and I can't wait to see some other top tables.
All right, man. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, take it easy, Russell. Goodbye, everyone.
All right.